Francis hated the beige walls of the halfway house, hated the stale air, the smell of disinfectant and despair. It clung to him, this place, a constant reminder of his failures. He'd been out for 6 months, clean, but the world outside these walls felt just as suffocating. Days blurred together, a monotonous cycle starting with the nursing home. He emptied bedpans, wiped drool, listened to the endless complaints of the elderly. Their frailty disgusted him, a mirror reflecting his own mortality. He ate lunch alone, usually a greasy burger and fries from the diner across the street. The food sat heavy in his gut, another layer of dissatisfaction. Francis craved more, craved escape. He dreamt of money, of power, of a life where he didn't have to answer to anyone. He saw himself as a modern-day Scarface, rising from the ashes of his past to claim what he deserved. The reality, however, was the stench of urine and the vacant stares of the people he was paid to care for. It was a cruel joke, his life, and he was the punchline. The afternoons were the worst. The Florida sun beat down on the asphalt, turning the world into a shimmering mirage. He'd drive, windows down, music blasting, trying to drown out the thoughts that gnawed at him. Rage, always simmering beneath the surface, threatened to boil over. It was the cops, the judges, the system that had put him in this cage. They were the enemy, the ones holding him back from greatness. He popped a handful of fries into his mouth, the salt doing little to mask the taste of bitterness. The diner was empty, except for a young couple making out in the corner booth. Francis glared at them, their happiness a personal affront. He was alone, always alone. And it was their fault. The world's fault. He deserved better. He deserved everything. Every encounter with authority was a confrontation. The probation officer's condescending tone, the security guard's suspicious glance, the endless rules and regulations designed to keep him in his place. Francis saw it as a personal attack, a challenge to his very being. He wasn't going to be controlled, not anymore. He'd lash out verbally, always careful to stay on the right side of the law. But the anger, the hatred, it festered inside him like a wound. It manifested in his dreams, vivid nightmares of revenge, of violence, of finally breaking free from the shackles that bound him. He'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, the line between reality and fantasy blurred. The medication was supposed to help, to quiet the storm in his head. Lithium, the doctor called it. A magic pill to cure his manic depression. Francis scoffed at the idea. He wasn't sick, he was just angry. Angry at the world, angry at himself, angry at a life that had dealt him a losing hand. He flushed the pills down the toilet, a small act of rebellion that gave him a fleeting sense of power. He knew, deep down, that he was spiraling. The rage was consuming him, pushing him closer to the edge. But he couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. It was the only thing that made him feel alive, the only thing that kept him going. He was a ticking time bomb, waiting to explode. Francis looked at his reflection in the greasy spoon's window. He saw the beginnings of a double chin, the way his stomach strained against his t-shirt. He was soft, out of shape, a far cry from the image he had of himself. John Cena, that was his idol. The wrestler, the actor, the embodiment of strength and success. Francis would watch his movies, his interviews, and feel a surge of motivation. He'd start working out, eating right, convinced that he could achieve the same level of greatness. But the motivation never lasted. He'd skip workouts, binge on junk food, the desire for instant gratification always winning out. He told himself it was temporary, that he'd get back on track soon. But deep down, he knew he was lying to himself. He was trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage, his dreams crumbling under the weight of his own inaction. He popped another antacid, his stomach churning from the greasy food. The wrestling match blared on, the cheers of the crowd a stark contrast to the silence of his own life. He imagined himself in the ring, body sculpted, muscles rippling, the crowd chanting his name. It was a fantasy, a fleeting escape from the reality of his existence. He knew he wasn't John Cena. He wasn't even close. And the realization filled him with a deep sense of shame. He was a failure, a fraud, a nobody. He picked up another chicken wing, the grease glistening under the fluorescent lights. His reflection stared back at him, a stranger in a greasy spoon, lost in a world of his own making. The miles flew by, the hum of the engine a constant drone in his ears. He drove aimlessly, radio tuned to a hip-hop station, the lyrics a soundtrack to his discontent. He craved connection, someone to share his thoughts with, someone to understand the turmoil inside him. But his relationships were fleeting, superficial. He pushed people away before they could get too close, his own need for control masking a deep-seated fear of rejection. He thought about joining a gym, maybe finding a girl who liked to lift weights, who understood his need for physicality. But the thought of social interaction, of exposing his vulnerabilities, filled him with dread. So he remained isolated. His only companions, the voices on the radio and the empty promises of his own imagination. Social media was his only solace, a digital world where he could curate an image of himself that bore little resemblance to reality. He'd post pictures of himself at the gym, of healthy meals he never ate, of a life he desperately wanted others to believe he was living. The likes, the comments, they provided a temporary high, a fleeting sense of validation. But it was all a facade, a carefully constructed illusion. And deep down, Francis knew it. He craved a real connection, a love that could save him from himself. But the truth was, he was too damaged, too lost in his own anger and resentment to let anyone in. He would continue to push people away, to sabotage any chance at happiness, his own worst enemy trapped in a self-imposed prison of loneliness. He was a black hole, sucking the life out of everything and everyone around him. And in the end, he would be left with nothing but the echoes of his own rage.